This is another video in the series of literary criticism and theory, and I have been discussing with you feminist literary criticism. I have given you one video lecture on history of feminist literary criticism, four waves of feminist literary criticism. Now, in this video lecture, I'll be discussing with you some of the most important key terms which are used in feminist literary criticism and theory. What I have seen that students get confused when they encounter with different terminology related to theory and criticism. So, in this video lecture, I'll explain some important key terms which are related to feminist literary criticism. This will be better for my viewers if the slides are before them. So I'll take the help of the slides and will try to explain some of the important terms which are used in feminist literary criticism and theory. Now, come to the slides and look at the important terms. So now the first important term which I would like to discuss with you is patriarchy. I have seen that when you read feminist literary criticism and theory, you encounter with this term very much. So those who have started reading feminist criticism for the first time, for them these terms will be very useful, and there are so many terms which are related to queer theory. So you please stay tuned with this lecture till the end. You'll find many important points. So what is this patriarchy? Patriarchy is the hierarchical structured society in which men hold more power. So actually, when you read feminist literary criticism, you find out that it discusses more about absence than presence. That women are not there in the center; they are at the periphery. So bringing women from margin, from periphery to the center was the main focus of feminist literary criticism. The entire society, the entire literature was, patriarchal. It was, man-oriented. So patriarchy means hierarchical structured society in which men hold more power, and these feminist writers revolted against this patriarchal structure of the society. Now, coming to the next term, that is marginalization. What is this marginalization? You encounter with the words like oppression, marginalization, discrimination, and all that. So marginalization is the process of the process or the state of being forced to the edges of social and political significance. Edges of, you are marginalized means you are at the periphery, you are at the margin. So these women were at the periphery, they were marginalized. So this marginalization word is also very important, which is used. Now coming to the next term, which is called sexism. What is this sexism? Sexism means the idea that women are inferior to men. So these feminist critics also reacted against the sexist approach. And when we say sexist approach, it means an approach which considers that women are inferior to men. Now coming to next important term which is used by these critics is the misogyny. I think you are very much familiar with this word. Misogyny means hatred of women. Now, next is misandry. This word is also, used. You will find out dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against men or male, sex. That is also word misandry. Now, coming to this word internalized sexism, this is also very much used in criticism and theory. What is this internalized sexism? When the belief in women's inferiority becomes part of one's own worldview or self-concept. You make your perception, you internalize it that women are inferior, and they should be kept at the periphery, at the margin. So this is a kind of internalized sexism. You encounter with these terms. Now another important term, very good term, misogynoir. Now what is this misogynoir? misogynoir is, a kind of misogyny directed towards black women. I'll tell you later on that, there are various branches of feminism, or you can better call it feminisms. So we have black women, we have, black feminist criticism also. Okay, so another, branch which flourished. So what is this misogynoir? Misogynoir is a kind of misogyny directed towards black women, where race and gender both play roles in bias. Not only because, you find gender as playing the role, but as far as black women are concerned, race is also counted. So misogynoir is actually misogyny directed towards black women. Now, black women, where not only gender but race also plays the important role, and that is why black women are generally called that they are doubly oppressed. Okay. Now, this term was first coined by Moya Bailey. You just remember the name, a queer black feminist. Now, these days you will find out the queer theory, queer studies. So the queer black feminist Moya Bailey, she created the term to address misogyny directed towards black women in American visual and popular culture. So in competitive examinations, sometimes we have the questions like that who coined the particular term. So misogynoir by queer black feminist Moya Bailey. Now, this again is a very important term, LGBTQ. Now, these days, researchers have started doing their research on this in this particular domain. Now, LGBTQ is actually the acronym for L means lesbian, G means gay, B means bisexual, T means transgender, and Q means queer. So this is actually an acronym for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. Now, this word queer, actually some people also use Q in the sense of questioning. So what is this LGBTQ? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning. Okay, meaning people who are figuring out their sexual or gender identity. Now, sometimes LGBTQ also is LGBTQIA, where I stands for intersex and A stands for asexual or aromantic, agender. So you can say LGBTQ, or you can also say LGBTQIA. Now this is a very popular field which is emerging in the field of feminist literary criticism. I'll tell you various terms which are used in this LGBTQ or the queer theory or queer studies. Now, coming to this term cisgender, it is a term for people whose gender identity matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. For example, when you say someone who identifies as a woman and was assigned a female at birth is a cisgender woman. Okay, now this term cisgender is the opposite of the word transgender, and you find the word transgender which is used in queer theory. Now this transgender, which I have just used, is an umbrella term that describes people whose gender identity or expression does not match the sex they were assigned at birth. For example, transgender person may identify as a woman despite having been born with male genitalia. Now this word transphobia is also used, especially in queer studies. What is the transphobia? The prejudice towards trans people. Now what is this transmisogyny? Now transmisogyny includes negative attitudes, hate, discrimination towards transgender individuals. And what kind of transgender individuals? Who fall on the feminine side of the gender spectrum. Okay, so this is trans misogyny. Now, coming to these terms which are very popular, in the current situation, the current theory, in the contemporary theories, especially in queer theory, TERF, TERF. What is this term? Actually, it's an acronym meaning trans, exclusionary, radical, feminists. Okay, so the term refers to feminists who are transphobic. So just remember this term, TERF stuff, trans, exclusionary, radical, feminism. I'll tell you about, liberal feminism and, radical feminism. These are the terms actually which are used. Come to this term, SWERF, SWERF. Again, an acronym. It stands for sex, worker, exclusionary, radical, feminist. The last RF is for radical feminists. Okay, now what does it stand for? What does it refer to? It refers to feminists who say prostitution oppresses women. So these are the two very important terms, TERF, TERF, and SWERF, SWERF. Now come to gender fluidity. Now, fluid gender, for example, we use the term. So what it is? Not identifying with a single fixed gender. This is gender fluidity. Now, come to the important term, women of color. Now, as I told you that, you will study various branches of feminism where, French feminism is there, black feminism is there. So when we say women of color, actually this is the term which is used in feminist literary criticism and theory. It's actually a term to unite women from marginalized communities of color, which are the non-white, communities, marginalized communities, and those communities which have experienced oppression. Okay, now who are these women? These are the African women, Asian women, Latin or Native American descent. These are the women who are of African descent or Asian descent or Latin or Native American descent. So these are actually the women of color, and they have developed different branch of feminism. So we have women of color, actually the term which is used in feminist literary criticism and theory. Now, what is this androgynous mind? Now, what I thought that there are so many terms which are used in feminist literary criticism and theory and you are not familiar with. And more than that, these are the terms which are very often asked in competitive examinations, especially in UGC NET examination. So I have also given some factual details of these terms. So you will just keep revising these terms, and you'll find these questions in your examination also. What is this androgynous mind? Androgyny actually is the combination of masculine and feminine characteristics. Okay, when you say androgyny, it is the combination of masculine and feminine characteristics, but in an ambiguous, form. Now, this term was introduced by Virginia Woolf in her critical work, A Room of One's Own, published in 1929. Now, to indicate the creative mentality that partakes of both masculine means andro and feminine means gyno qualities. So, androgynous is actually the combination of masculine and feminine characteristics. The term was introduced by Virginia Woolf in A Room of One's Own, a very important text. I have already given the reference of this book in my first video lecture, and my suggestion to you is, my advice to you is that before coming to this video, please watch the first lecture on feminist literary criticism, then you can better understand it. Now, canon, this is a very important term, not specifically used in feminist literary criticism, but this is a term which is used in literary theory, because you find out that it's written like women are not included in the literary canon. So what is this canon? So when you say literary canon, it refers to a body of books, narratives and other texts considered to be the most important and influential. So when we say it's not a part of literary canon, means it's not an important text. So the women actually, the texts written by male writers were the part of the literary canon, and women's texts were not the part of the literary canon. So this again is is a question which was raised by these these critics. Now, this consciousness raising, you look at the term consciousness raising. This is again a term which is very significant in feminist literary criticism, and it is used by it's a form of actually networking to raise political and gender awareness. You see, I told you about four waves of feminism, and you see. I'll tell you just after a few slides about liberal feminism and radical feminism. Now, this kind of consciousness, raising was initiated by radical feminists in the late 60s and early 70s. Means a part of second wave of, feminism. Consciousness, raising sessions involve small groups of women meeting weekly to discuss predetermined subjects and become more aware of themselves and of the issues they face as women. So this consciousness raising is to raise the consciousness, to get united, to come together. So it was a kind of networking to raise political and social gender awareness, and it was popular. It was initiated by radical feminists in late 60s and early 70s. Coming to a very important term, feminine écriture. Now. These are the terms actually which I have seen were asked in examination. You must be very much focused and attentive to these terms. Feminine écriture or écriture feminine. You see, when you say écriture feminine, which translates as a women's writing, is a term coined by French feminist and theorist Hélène Sixos. You please. Remember the name of Hélène Sixos, one of the important French feminist theorist. The term was coined by Hélène Sixos in her 1975 essay, The Laugh of the Medusa. You will just keep in mind that the term feminine écriture was coined by the French theorist Hélène Sixos in her book, in the essay, The Laugh of the Medusa. In broad terms, the meaning is the feminine practice of writing. When you say feminine écriture, it means feminine practice of writing. The term was coined by Hélène Sixos in her essay, The Laugh of the Medusa. Now, again, a very important term, feminine mystique. Now, the feminine mystique is actually a book by Betty Friedan. I told you the name of Betty Friedan, one of the important, feminist critics. Now, when you talk about, second wave of, feminism, then you will find out, you see, the second wave of feminism in the United States. And this book, actually, The Feminine Mystique, was published in the year 1963, and by Betty Friedan. Just remember the name of this American, critic, feminist critic. Now, this feminine mystique is basically the false notion that woman's role in society is to be wife, mother, and housewife, nothing else. The mystique, actually, she has tried to demystify the role of the woman. If you read it, The Feminine Mystique, I'll, prepared some more slides on the important, feminist critics and theorists. In third video, which I'll, prepare, there I'll discuss these, critics. Now, hegemony is again a very important term which is used in theory. Its meaning is one group's multiple level of dominance over another. We say patriarchal hegemony. When we say patriarchal hegemony, means dominance of males actually. So again, these feminist critics revolted against this kind of domination. Now again, one important point which I would like to tell you, that the cultural hegemony was the term which was used by Antonio Gramsci. Okay, so the reference of this critic I'll give you in reference to the other, the concepts later. Hegemony means a kind of domination. Now, this again is a very important term, other. Okay, the term used by Simon D. Beauvoir, a very important critic, remarkable for the second sex, where she says that woman is the second sex. I have given you the reference of this text in my first video, and I'll give you 2-3 slides in my third video, because Simon de Beauvoir played a very important role in the development of feminist literary criticism. Now, the other, other term, a woman is other. What is this other? Other is actually, it has been used to describe the marginalization of a group or individual as not self, the objectification of a subject. Okay, again, you can say that here we are talking about margin and center. The margin is basically the other, and center, patriarchy is at the center, or the male is at the center, and woman is at the margin. She is other. Now, very important term, phallocentrism. Now, what is this phallocentrism? Phallocentrism is the ideology that phallus, a male sexual organ, is the central element in organization of the social world. Again, a patriarchal, term. So, when you say phallocentrism, we are privileging masculine in the construction of your meaning, defining the male as the center. You see, male is always, this is a phallocentric approach or phallocentrism, where we define everything keeping male at the center. Now, this was a line, to be male is to be human, to be female is to be the other. This line is repeated by, the critics. So when we interpret everything in the light of the male perspective, our approach becomes phallocentric. We define everything, keeping male at the center. Now look at this word, which is really phallogocentrism. Now, the phallogocentrism is a combination of phallocentrism and logocentrism. Now, these are the terms actually which you will encounter while reading the different theories. Post-structural theory, deconstruction, Marxist, other theories, you'll find out these, terms. So, phallocentrism I have just told you, and when you say phallogocentrism, it means combination of phallocentrism and logocentrism. Okay. Now, what is this? When you say phallogocentrism, it means combination of phallocentrism and logocentrism. What is this logocentrism? Because everything is related, so I will not leave any word which can create confusion in understanding. So when you say logocentrism, read Derrida in deconstruction theory. Logocentrism is actually the attitude that logos, a Greek term for speech, is the central principle of language and philosophy. What is this logocentrism? Logos is the view that is speech and not writing is central to language. This is a very important term which you'll keep in your mind, because whenever you study structuralism and deconstruction, the term you will find this term. Logocentrism is the view that speech and not writing is the central to language. Now, coming to the next important term, that is sex versus gender. Again, a very important term. I have actually explained this in my first video, but again, I'm taking this because this is very repeatedly used by feminist critics. Now, what is the sex? What is the difference between sex and gender? Sex is the biological aspect of one's identity, and gender is the social construction of sexuality. Okay, so gender is constructed by society, and sex is basically the biological aspect. This way you will, differentiate. Now, the subject-object, a binary combination. Okay, and very important in feminist discourse. Now, the subject possesses always the important part, that is the male, and object, that is the female. The subject is always empowered in the hierarchical societies, and it always dominates, others. The object is what is? The object is marginalized in a number of ways. So this subject object is actually the binary combination, and very important, which is used in feminist discourse. Now again, coming to the term womanism, very often asked in the examination also, you must know it, because I have seen that in the case of Alice Walker, Alice Walker as a feminist critic and all that, these are the questions which have been asked in the examination. Now, this term womanism is actually used by Alice Walker, who is African American novelist. Now, this term was first used by her in her short story Coming Apart in 1970. This is a very factual point which I am telling you. Will keep it in mind that this womanism or the womanist, the term was used by Alice Walker in the short story in the short story Coming Apart in 1979, and later in A Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Womanist Prose in 1983. You see, Walker defined womanist as a black feminist or feminist of color. Okay, from the black folk expression of mothers to female children, these are actually the points which she said. But the important statement which she said about womanism is this. This is the statement of Alice Walker. What did she say? The meaning of womanism: a woman who loves other women sexually and or non-sexually, appreciates and prefers women's culture, women's emotional flexibility, and women's strength, committed to survival and wholeness of entire people, male and female, not a separatist, except periodically for health, loves music, loves dance, loves the moon, loves the spirit, loves struggle, loves the folk, loves hustle, regardless. Womanist is to feminist as purple is to lavender. Now, I have seen that this line was very often asked in examination. This was the explanation of the term womanism by Alice Walker herself. Now, this term is, look at this term. This is not woman, the woman. I have also seen that some radical, feminist critics have used this term. Now, term adopted by some, feminists as a way of eliminating man from woman. Actually, in woman, man is used, and they don't want to see the word man here. And instead of man, they have used min here. Okay, but because they want to show that that woman is not man. So this you will find out here. So this term, which is very often used in liberal, feminism. What is this liberal feminism? It's a form of feminist theory, or a strand within feminism movement that emphasizes working for, women's liberation and gender equality. This is actually the point which you find out in the feminist literary criticism, because they're talking about women's liberation and gender equality. Now, during this time when this liberal feminism, was flourishing, we have the, establishment of NOW. What is the full form of NOW? National Organization of Women. Then we have this radical feminists. Now, who are the radical feminists? They tend to be more militant in their approach. So when you're talking about the radical feminism, we're talking about militant feminists who are very militant, very aggressive in their ideology. Now, socialist feminism. What is the socialist feminism? It connects the oppression of women to Marxist ideas about exploitation, oppression, and labor. Let me tell you that this feminism movement is related to post-structuralism, Marxism, deconstruction, psychoanalysis, and all that. So you'll find out all these branches also which are related to. So socialist feminism is which connects the oppression of women to Marxist ideas. Now again, a very important term, Chicana feminism. or this is also called Chicanism. Okay, you just keep it in mind. The very significant term emerging field. It's a socio-political movement in the United States. Okay, that analyzes the historical, cultural, spiritual, educational, economic intersections of Mexican American women. Now, feminism, which is talking about Mexican American women, known as Chicana, is basically Chicana feminism. Okay, it serves as a movement theory and praxis that helps women reclaim their existence among the Chicano movement and American feminism. Very significant part of American feminist movement. I told you the various branches of feminism emerging in different countries. So this was the Chicana feminism, which is a part of American feminist movement. Coming to this important term that is called post-colonial feminism. This is also known as third world feminism. It has the issues which are related to post-colonialism, like issues related to migration, slavery, suppression, resistance, representation, difference, race, gender, etc. So it is talking about variety of themes which are related to colonialism and patriarchy. So now when we talk about post-colonial criticism, so post-colonial feminist critics, they have actually derived some important ideas from these famous post-colonial critics. My lecture will be on post-colonial theory later on, but these are the important texts which you will keep in mind. Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, Edward Said, Orientalism, and Homi Bhabha, The Location of Culture. So these are actually the important texts which you have. So these feminist critics have derived their sustenance from these post-colonial texts: Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon, Orientalism by Edward Said, and Location of Culture by Homi Bhabha. Now, you see, as I told you, that various other theories are also merging in feminist criticism, and you will find out that the post-structural theories of Derrida, Michel Foucault, psychoanalytical theory of Lacan. Actually, they have also provided some material to these feminist, critics and the methods of, interpretation. One important feminist critic, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, very famous name, and Can the Subaltern Speak, is a very seminal essay which discusses the discourse of the West and the possibility of the subaltern woman speaking. Whenever we talk about Dalit writing and this feminist criticism, we always mention the name of Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak and the essay Can the Subaltern Speak. Now, there's another text, A Critique of Post-Colonial Reason Toward a History of the Vanishing Present. This you will also keep in mind. Now, another important feminist critic is Trinh Minh Ha. You see, very much related to Spivak, and this is the name of the text, When the Moon Waxes Red, Representation, Gender and Cultural Politics, which was published in 1991. Now, I would also like to mention the name of these feminist critics like Anne McClintock, Imperial Leather, Race, Gender and Sexuality in the Colonial Context, and Chandra Talpade Mohanty, Third World Women and the Politics of Feminism, edited with Anne Russo and Lord Storrs. So whenever you are talking post-colonial feminism, we have these important names. Now, this is again another text, Kumkum Sangari and Sudesh Vad were the editors. And the text is Recasting Women, Essay in Indian Colonial History. So they are actually the part of post-colonial, studies. Mention should also be made of Susi Tharu and K. Lalita. Now, when we talk about French feminism, the term which is there, we have three very important names: Hélène Sixox, Luce Irigaray, and Julia Kristeva. Actually, the development which took place around 1970s to the 1990s. French feminism, you'll also talk. I'll give a separate lecture on these French critics like Hélène Sixox, Luce Irigaray, and Julia Kristeva. Now, again, we have this very important term, ecofeminism. When we say ecofeminism, means linking ecology with feminism. This kind of feminism is also called ecological feminism. What is it all about? It examines the connection between woman and nature. Specifically, this philosophy emphasizes the ways both nature and women are treated by the patriarchal, society. Again, this you will remember the term was introduced by French feminist Françoise d'Eybon in the year 1974. Difference feminism. It was developed by feminists in 1980s as a part of reaction to equality feminism. Now the purpose was the same, that it also claimed aimed for equality, but it was called difference feminism. I have been repeatedly using this term black feminist criticism. Now this emerged in the late 1960s and early 1970s. It was a part of American feminist criticism, and it came into the light after the civil rights movement during the second wave of feminist criticism. Now, when in America the Black Power movement and the Black Art movement dominated, then this Black feminist criticism also came to the front. Now, these women were talking about the dual oppression. Dual oppression means the oppression via race and gender. Now, the year 1970 was very significant as far as black feminism is concerned. We have the publication of some important texts like Toni Morrison's novel The Bluest Eye, very important text. She has also written another text called Sula, and where the protagonist is actually the image of the protagonist Sula is the image of a transgressive woman, of non-conformist woman. She says to her mother, if you are a woman, I don't want to be like that, because she does not want to conform to the society, very aggressive in nature. So Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, Alice Walker, The Third Life of Branch Copeland, and also The Color Purple and all that, which she has written. And Maya Angelou's memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and this anthology, The Black Woman. These are the four important texts which played a very important role in black feminist criticism. Now, these texts show how African American are oppressed by both white racist and black women. For them, actually, it was a double oppression. They were doubly oppressed. We have also a pamphlet, Double Jeopardy, to be black and female, written by Francis M. Beale in 1916, and very popular pamphlet, Double Jeopardy. It was said that black woman was doubly jeopardized. She was a female and she was a black. So on the basis of being female and on the basis of being black, so it was a double jeopardy for them. Now this is again a very important text as far as black feminist criticism is concerned. This is Black Women Novelists, the development of tradition by Barbara Christian. Now this is a separatist feminism. It's a form of radical feminism that does not support heterosexual, relationship. Lesbian feminism is very much related to that. Queer studies, sexual diversity studies, or LGBT studies. I have already told you this this term. Now, for LGBT studies, we are using the term queer studies, these days, which is now a very popular term. Now, there are very some critical terms also which are there in especially in queer studies. For example, homophobia means fear for the same-sex love. Internalized homophobia refers to the hatred and fear of the experience of the gay people. Heterosexism privileges heterosexuality. Heterocentrism is a prejudice against the gay. Biological essentialism maintains that certain sections of the people are naturally gay. So, these are the terms actually which are used especially in queer studies. So what we have seen in this video lecture that we have many important terms, the key terms which are used in feminist criticism, and whenever you study the development of the feminist literary criticism and theory, you must keep all these terms in your mind. Thank you very much.